Sorry, that's not the Mojo that we're talking about. So when we originally sat down with the team and had a look at what we thought Mojo was, these were some of the words that we came up with. So it was about have your passion, it was about your oomph, it was the spark that you have in you, that spice. It's also your fun and your spirit and all those bits and pieces. So sometimes people will equate Mojo with resilience. If your Mojo's in a good place, it helps you to be more resilient, but they're not exactly the same. You can be feeling quite sad, but your Mojo's still in a good place. So while it also can influence your emotions, it's not the same as your emotions. So when we look at there's some different definitions of Mojo. Nick's slides are a little bit different to the slides I was thinking of, but there's a quote that he often uses when he's doing his training from Barbara Capstick that talks about Mojo being that spark in our life, that thing that makes us definably different, the ability that we have to influence other people and to influence decisions that they make. My favourite definition of Mojo is really similar to this, around an acronym for it. So for me, that M is about making meaning. It's about knowing yourself, being mindful, as we've heard so much about today. Checking in with yourself every day, checking in with yourself during the day. Identifying early when something might not quite be right. So for lots of people who work, particularly I come from a special school, so in the field of special education, we do the big stuff really well. We do the crisis really well. We have a great process for working with the students that are affected, with the families, with the staff, making sure that everyone's had debrief and follow up. But what we often miss, and one of the reasons that we originally did the pilot with Nick and with Paul, was what was happening in our school was that it was the little stuff, it was the cumulative stuff. It was the bits and pieces that were going on every day that weren't big things, but they were really eating away at our staff, eating away at their mojo. So people would be okay, and then not okay. And so what we want to do as part of this project was give people those skills so that they could check in on themselves consistently, that they would have a bank of tools so that if things weren't going quite as they thought they should be, if they weren't feeling quite like they should be, they knew they had tools they could use when they knew how to find help. And that we could then have a better staff who are better able to work with our students because they're looking after themselves as well. The O in Mojo, to me, looks at your outcomes. So it looks at the impact that if your Mojo is in the right place, the impact that can have on your home life, the impact that can have on those around you, and the impact that has on your ability to do your job. So it's really important that our staff have the skills to maintain their mojo at school so they're not just taking that home every day. The J in Mojo stands for joy. We all should find joy in what we do, but so often the story of the day, the thing that we take home at the end of every day and tell our loved ones about our school day or tell somebody that we're catching up with, isn't a story of joy. Because we're not looking after ourselves. We're giving all of ourselves all day and we've got nothing left when we go home. The better we are at maintaining ourselves during the day, the more opportunity that there is that when we get home at the end of the day, we can share the stories of joy. We can share the sparkling moments. And our school has, one of our tools is a toilet time tool because we spend lots of time in the toilet. But part of that toilet time tool is just what's your sparkling moment for the day. And that's become a term throughout our school now, is sparkling moments. And so we share sparkling moments between staff, we share sparkling moments with our families, and we share sparkling moments with our loved ones when we go home. So the story of the day is no longer going home and telling about the worst thing that's happened during your day. It's focusing on the positive things that have happened during your day. That's what you're sharing. And as we saw in the sessions this morning, that changes your whole mindset. When you're sharing that happiness and you're finding that joy, it changes your mindset. And the final O in Mojo stands for opportunity. If we're looking after ourselves, we're creating more opportunities for better and more quality connections in the way that we connect and we have relationships with not just our students, but also with each other, with our team. For those who work in the field of special education, we need a team so you'll be able to create stronger links within your team. The first tool in Mojo is a tool just to get people to be aware of how they're feeling. So to do that, everyone should have a balloon. If you don't have a balloon, just put your hand up and Nick will give you one. And this is just a visual in terms of having you think about what your Mojo will be like. So just have a think about now how you're feeling today. We've had 2 days of a really great conference. Some of us are away from home, away from our kids, all those sorts of things, which, you know, can be a double-edged sword. I want you just to blow your balloon up to reflect where you think your Mojo's sitting at the moment. It's a personal thing, it's not the biggest is the best or anything like that. Just where you think yours is at the moment. Don't pop with your Mojo so at the moment that you might go to the top. So this is something that we do with our staff, and we check in at staff meetings. It's just a visual for staff, just to think of where you are. You don't want to be down where the purple balloon is. If you're down where the purple balloon is, you've given everything that you've got. Okay? You want your Mojo to be maintained and sustained. And during the day it's going to fluctuate, and that's normal. The second part of this activity, which we're not doing today, but is where we actually talk to people about making a list, and they make on their balloon of what they can do at work to maintain their Mojo. So 10:30 on a Monday morning, and you give yourself a bit of a check-in, a mental check-in at morning tea, and you're not travelling very well at all. You haven't got much left at all. What do you do then at school? Because at home you might go and have half a bottle of red and dance to Shania Twain or something, you know, and all is good, but you can't do that at work. And in my case, work's a school environment. What do you do? So looking at all the things that you can do at school that can boost your Mojo back up. What are those things? What can they be? The other thing that staff often like to do is a bit of this. Because, and that sort of reflects, when you let people have a bit of a whinge with their balloon, there are people, and this is something I suppose a lot more prevalent in our school environment prior to doing this, there are people in your work environment that when you see them coming, you want to duck and run for cover. Okay? Those people that at you the whole time. There has been a huge decrease in that since we've had the Mojo project in place now for a year and a half. And a big part of that is people being more mindful about where they are. Part of that is a team approach, that we're all checking in on each other a lot more. And also having the tools that we're able to say to other people, now's the time, you know, where's your sparkling moment? If there's not a sparkling moment, talking about some of the other tools, or reminding people that they need to be using their tools. And so we're seeing a lot less of that, a lot more of teamwork, and a lot more of team pulling together.
And linking on to what Adrian was saying, this works. There's no right, as Adrian said, it's not a competition as to whose Mojo is inflated the most. It's a term I picked up, it's not my term, and you have to excuse the language, it's not too bad. But what's called a bullshit rule, you've got to be happy. You know, we're human beings, we go through good bits and bad bits, and acknowledging that is important. Again, being mindful and present to how we are. Then, and this is an important part for me around Mojo Maintenance, was then, okay, what am I going to do about that? So taking some personal responsibility. So again, having been a school principal, I was always mindful, there's a bit of a tension, it can always come about of them and us. Whereas, you know, the admin or the leadership could be thinking, oh, for God's sake, why don't staff sort themselves out? And staff could be thinking, oh, for God's sake, why don't admin help us? And it's a dual, it needs a bit of both. Ultimately, it's down to us as individuals. No one can look after you. You've got to look after yourself. They can help each other, and that's an important part of the whole journey. Yes. So a little bit of story, and a big thanks to Adrian and the team at Nambour Special School for starting the journey with us, being brave enough to give it a go. So over the years of being involved in behaviour support and my time in coaching, gradually emerged there might be a better way to do this. As Adrian said, the big incidents schools are generally good at doing, right? Generally good at doing, but the day-to-day drip, you know, by the end of the term, there tends to be more incidents than there are at the start of the term. And that's not, you know, because kids are probably more tired, but staff are more tired. So we're less resilient, we're less responsive, and we tend to react rather than being proactive around some of those. So you can see the originators at the top left there. I've done it with another special school down here, Curramundi, which is again not far away from Nambour, funnily enough. Then we did a morphed version for principals, to recognise that principals not quite like any other position in the school, so a one-day version with the Queensland special school leaders. And we've also since done one. This is in a Cherbourg State School, which is an Indigenous school. And not up there, but Adrian's other half is in a primary school. So we developed one for a primary school as well. So I'm going to tell a little bit about the story. It's not, we didn't want to come in, myself and Paul, didn't want to come in and tell people as experts, this is what you need to do to look after yourself. So we've got a different knowledge and experience. Mine's more in the special ed behaviour space. Paul is in they come from a narrative therapy space. Always cautious about the therapy word. It's not about fixing people, all right? And deliberately talk about some of this. Sometimes people do need help being fixed, but this is not what Mojo Maintenance is about. So we made sure, even though my background spent many years in special ed, that we spent time shadowing and interviewing people in the school, all right? So we didn't come with any predetermined ideas of what it was like to be in their school or to be in a special school as part of that. Things resonated, but there's certain things we learned as a part of that whole process. And deliberately built into this, and you saw how quick and easy the Mojo meter is, or as someone recently called it, the Mojometer. That's what bringing it together. But the idea is this isn't adding to the workload. It's certainly not going to help well-being and how we're feeling. It's another job to be done. So the idea is the vast majority of them, there's one that's slightly different, I at some stage, but two, there's built into the working practices. So we looked at what people were already doing. Lots of people out there are already looking after their mojos. They didn't just come in to tell them how to do it, but just draw attention to it and to help those who sometimes not sure how to do it. Again, how do we share good practices happening? So vast majority are built in. So there's a home time tool that's had different morphs in terms of its name, but basically the home time. What do you do at the end of the day? What do you put in the pigeonhole? What do you put in the bin? What do you take in the backpack is a good thing, a positive thing that's worked for you. So there's simple tools that aren't sort of overly complicated to implement as part of that. And we haven't managed with all of the schools yet, but the idea is we find a pilot school who's willing to give this a go, and then we have another go, and we tweaked a bit more further from that. At the end of the day, it's very much a train-the-trainer model. So the idea is, and it builds on to this one hopefully, no it doesn't yet, we'll come on to that in a minute. I'll come back. The key premise behind it is the peer-reflective practice. So it's not what admin do to teachers, or teachers do to teacher aides or ed support, it's how do we look after each other. Okay, so how do I look after myself and how might I look after my peers as a key part around all of that. But just to jump back quickly before I go into the detail of that. So this has emerged for us. We thought, well, we're just lucky at Nambour. It's the right place, right time. It probably won't work anywhere else. So what emerged for us, and we're very deliberate when we talk with schools who are interested in this, is Mojo Maintenance for us is for the schools and individuals within schools that are 0 to +5 in this space. All right, so you're generally doing okay, this will help. But if you're not in a good space, or the relationships are a bit damaged and broken, or you as an individual are not in a good space, you probably need other supports and measures out there. So it doesn't fix, it's a horrible word, isn't it? It doesn't fix people or fix organisations that need additional help and support, but it helps those that are generally doing okay get better and thrive. And that's certainly, and Adrian will share some information on this, that's certainly the perspective we had at Nambour and other schools. They were doing at least okay, if not better, and this helped them on their journey to keep getting a bit better and a bit better at the day-to-day things. So, key bits around peer-reflective practice. So there's some assumptions we're going to share with you, then some of the key skills, and we'll leave the rest of the time, we've got a bit of time if we need it to, but Adrian's sharing the outcomes of this, because that's most important for us, and obviously for Adrian in the school, is does this make a difference? And we wanted to collect evidence and data around that as simply as possible. Again, so it's not, massively complex and everything else. We didn't want to add to people's workload as part of that. So, key part is, as much as possible, that most of the tools you can do on your own, but we encourage people to find someone to have a conversation with. By sharing that, by having opportunities to discuss, you each learn different strategies and each approaches. And actually it helps you feel better when you realise it's rarely is it just you facing these things, experiencing those. So that problem shared is a problem halved sort of experience. And I'm not going to my peer to fix me, I'm just going to share, and they have an opportunity to share with me too. around key questions and key tools that help build up those processes. If you want to have a bit of a deeper look, we're downstairs, then in the breaks we've got some of the books that can give you a sense of what they are as part of that. And the peer bit, very important for me, is the power. Trying to remove, eliminate, minimise the power differential. No matter how collaborative your leader is, whoever your leader might be, there is a power differential. They might be the one writing your reference. They might be the one saying whether you go for a promotion or whatever else it is. And it's going to be naturally quite difficult to be truly share with that person how it's feeling. I think, how are they going to judge me as around all of this? I want to try and take out the judgment as much as possible. So we trained up 2 from the leadership team, 2 teachers and 2 teacher aides. How schools implement it is totally up to them. They know their schools, they know how best to implement it, not for us to tell them how to do that. But train a range of people as opposed to it just being certain people or leadership people. There's a responsibility around all of this. And it comes from the narrative therapy in space, of which I know a little bit, not a huge amount, but we all carry around, we're all made up of stories. And unfortunately, as we heard earlier, we often notice the bad bits of stories more than the good bits of stories. But by sharing these, by talking about and by drawing attention to them, we can all develop, thicken the storylines to talk about when we have done well, when we have coped, when days have been difficult. And then by conversation sort of thickens those storylines, we're more likely to remember them, more likely to bring them forward as part of that. Key elements about trying to stay out of judgment. I always say it's easy to say be non-judgmental, much harder to do. So I quite like this as a positive frame because, how do you be non-judgmental? It's like saying, how do you, whatever you do, don't think of a pink elephant. You can't, So this is one way, not the only way, but be curious about what it might be that they're talking about and their stories to help them explore that further. That shared understanding is of great value to each other. All right, because not only do you get better at looking after yourself, I actually think, that's a good idea, I might try that. So there's an annual Mojo Maintenance plan. So the start of the year you work out, what did I do last year? They've got to the year. How might I remind myself when I'm going through difficult times? And there's a termly booster shot, we call it, where small groups, 4 to 6 groups of staff get together, and it's very deliberate, very structured conversation. So we don't go into a moan fest. We go into spaces that are helpful and useful to reflect, and we each learn from each other as part of that. Is important. And trying to stay in empathy mode, compassion mode rather than sympathy mode. All right. And again, the structure of the tools, they're very deliberate scripts, key questions in a certain order, to try and help us. Because in education, and even more slightly in special education, the strength is empathy, but overplay can become sympathy. Feel sorry for people. So this is about acknowledging how the challenges people face, but helping them take control of what they can take control of. If not, they have to go and find other people to have conversations. You can't do it all yourself, but the more we sort of open up that, the better. We heard it this morning, that real focus on strengths. What have we got that enables us to keep turning up day in, day out? All of us have strengths, we sometimes just don't notice them. So drawing light to those, drawing attention to those is a key message as part of all of that.
I suppose one of the other things that I want to share with you too, just as we start looking at the data, is that in anything you introduce to a school, you sort of always look at that 80% take-up rate. We have a 100% take-up rate. We don't have one staff member who's not engaged or not involved. And often when things, particularly for some of our male staff, not wanting to separate them out, but we do have a few of the male staff when we first started talking about we were going to do it, who were sort of like, I don't know about this. Sounds like that touchy-feely sort of stuff. Not that at all. 100% of staff engaged, which is incredible, and I think it speaks to the fact that the way that it's designed, the fact that it's work shadowing, the fact that it's based on the successes and the strengths you've already got in your school. It's not extra work. All of those things lead to a program that's really successful in the way that it's implemented within the school. Just a bit of general data, because everyone likes a little bit of data. These are from our school opinion survey. At our school, we're a special school on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. We have 150 students at the moment. The criteria for special school enrolment in Queensland is around intellectual disability. So all of our students have an intellectual disability, and about 81% of students have a second or multiple disability areas as well. So it is a complex work environment. Probably these two pieces of data have changed the most over the 5-year period. The first one, the writing's quite small, that says, I feel this is a safe place in which to work, and so that's changed dramatically, but it's the second one around staff morale. Last year's school opinion survey, 2017, 100% of staff in our school said that staff morale is positive, 100%, which is pretty incredible. It also means that we've got nowhere to go. But I think that really speaks to what's been happening in the school. There's been lots of things that have been put in place, but the icing on the cake over the last 18 months has been this focus on staff wellbeing. And I guess to back that up, last year there was a new question on the school opinion survey because they keep changing questions so that my data can't be as comparable as I'd like it to be. But the new question on there was, staff at my school are interested in our wellbeing, and 100% of staff said that they were. So, even taking into consideration that people who might be having a bad day on the day that they fill out the survey, because often we look at the results and go, some people are having a bad day on that day, those sorts of things, 100% of staff feel that other staff at the school are interested in their wellbeing. So in terms of a supported place to work, that's what we're all looking for and looking to create. In terms of just trying to get some information together around the Mojo project itself, last year we started at the beginning of last year after training staff at the end of 2016, and this is sort of what our data looks like. So we just asked 3 simple questions of staff in term 1, term 2 and in term 4. I can recognise when my Mojo sits daily. So at the beginning of the year, last year, most staff thought that they were sort of fairly aware or very aware. Interestingly, after we'd done some training with them in term 2, less people thought they were very aware after all. So there was that bit of reckoning and that bit more mindfulness around it. By the end of the year, we had been running our term boosters, plus we touched base in staff meetings, really putting it in practice, lots of visuals around the school to support staff, particularly behind toilet doors and things like that. But by the end of the year, we then had all of the staff, 100% of staff, saying that they felt they were very aware of where they sat daily. In terms of having tools that I can use to maintain my Mojo, again, we saw that same sort of shift where people originally went, yeah, I know, I've got some tools. After they started learning some tools, thinking, I've got a bit more learning to do. And then again, by the end of the year, most people were aware or very aware of what the tools they have, what's in their toolbox that they can use. And the tools are, when we teach the tools there, all the tools are there for people to use, but there will be 1 or 2 favourites that people will gravitate naturally towards as there are with any sort of strategies. And the last question we asked people was whether they felt they were effective in maintaining their Mojo. And again, a lot of people felt that they were at the beginning of the year. And by the end of the year, we do have over 80% of people who are now saying they're very aware and they feel that they can. But it's good to see too that there are some people saying that they're not as aware as they should be, or they're not maintaining their Mojo as well as they should be. And there's going to be times that we all travel through places like that as well. But even on the back of that, they all still feel that they're in a school where everyone has their well-being forefront in their mind. And then from this, I suppose we're hoping as a school, we are seeing as a school that this then, in terms of our student outcomes, we're seeing an increase in student outcomes as well.
A little bit flat. Any questions? Very well to take. So, deliberately call them tools. So the vast majority are there. So there's the only 2 that we recommend. Adrian did it. I'm pretty sure they did. Knowing Amber or knowing Adrian, but was that we think should have been, want a better word, mandated. It's not a very nice word, is it? But it was the annual one. So a plan at the start where, again, it's absolutely separated from performance, because often people get a bit confused with Mojo and performance. Now, again, generally, if our Mojo is better, we're likely to be performing better. But I certainly can remember some stuff I worked with over the years, their Mojo was really high and their performance wasn't really that great. They rocked up just before when they left dead on time, they were very happy. But, their performance wasn't really the leader where we wanted them to be. Most people isn't, but this is about self-care. How do I look after myself as part of this? There's an interesting spin-off project coming where we're looking at developing tools around practice, so deliberately around practice, as opposed to well-being as part of that. But the tools people use them as they want to, as they see fit. They're available. So there's the annual Mojo Maintenance plan where you sit down with a peer, set of top of the head 5 or 6 questions to reflect on that you can go back to, and then the term boosters. They're looking at things slightly differently in these groups, and but it's facilitated discussion as part of that, very structured as part of that. So, oh, you've got some comments. Sit back down.
I'll go on. Let's go to
It's all good?
No. The other part, sorry, when we took the data is that we looked at, staff wanted to provide comments for us about it. I'm not going to read through all these, but they're all very positive in the terms of how they felt it supported them. We do check in during our staff meeting. And while Mojo's not exactly the same as resilience, that's an important statement. We can't teach our kids to be resilient if we are. That's a really important statement. And I think the last statement in this one, just where it talks about, the collegial support, that's inclusive of everybody in the school. It is administration, it's teachers, it's teacher assistants, teacher aides. And as Nick said, each of those areas of the school, the teacher aides train the other teacher aides, and the teachers train the teachers, and admin, we work with admin. So there isn't that sort of hierarchy or worried about what you're going to share or what you're going to say. You can sort of share that with your peers, which is a really important part of it. So
I'll leave you with one final tool. Something, I may have missed it, but I don't think I did. It's around journaling. We talked a lot about mindfulness, but there's a lot of evidence around the power of journaling. Again, this is optional, so it's not everyone's cup of tea. Personally, I've certainly, I've built it into my daily practices now. I'm very structured around journaling. It helps. And it was linked to Barbara Fredrickson that was mentioned earlier about suddenly realising I'm a pretty positive person, but not hardwired to notice or be grateful for lots of things. So deliberate practice helps us get better about this. So this is the Mojo Journal. If you want to have a look at the books, I'll chat to myself and Adrian. We'll be around here and lunchtime, whatever else. So why don't you just think to yourself, because again, this is something that's designed to be done personally. If you want to share it, you're free to share it with someone else, but it's not designed. Journaling is designed to be personal. So simple questions. Again, it gives you a frame of reference on it. What's been inflating my mojo recently? So again, stopping and thinking, what's been going well? What's been helping me? And we deliberately talk about work and home, because Adrian said otherwise, we found in the early stage, everyone talks about stuff at home, and not much at work.